under the spotlight. In fact, we'll go straight into that discussion now with Sakina.
Well, thank you so much, Leanne. Now, the issue of youth unemployment has really picked up momentum, and the numbers released by Statistics South Africa, which now stands at 55.2%, a cause for real concern. Now, there are many voices of concern regarding this and our seeming inability to deal with the issue effectively. Now, two of the concerned voices, namely Corrin Varady from Idea Digital Education and YES Chief Executive Tashmia Ismail-Saville, are here with us to discuss this further. Thanks so much to both of you for coming through.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks. So first, let me get, Corrin, your response to Statistics South Africa releasing those stats. And we are told that if we take into account the number of job seekers who have now become disaffected, who have stopped looking, that number creeps up to about 69%, which is, of course, tragic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think people are seeing it as a sort of a symptom of economic growth issues. But really, it's a litmus test for us around what the failings or challenges are in the education sector. And particularly, I think we're looking at two things. One is that our students don't have foundational content knowledge and skills. They can't take on the labour market, and they can't take on the basic education sector either. And then secondly, we don't have digital literacy properly in this country. So that's saying that, you know, digital literacy, not about how to use technology, but how to innovate with technology. And they're the two aspects that we need to be looking at from a basic education point of view to be able to prepare our students, because there's knock-on effects into the tertiary sector as well.
So in other words, we're not producing the sort of skills that the job market actually needs.
Absolutely, it's job market. But I mean, you know, people are saying to me, well, why do we need maths and science? Why shouldn't we be augmenting or changing the current syllabus? We need to actually be just doing what's in front of us better. Because, you know, as I say, you know, innovation, tertiary skills, you know, are required in this sector, but we're not meeting foundational content or curriculum knowledge for our students.
And let's just break that down before we come to Tashmia in terms of what that says. 78% of grade 4 learners cannot read for meaning. Then 61% of grade 5 learners cannot do basic mathematics. And I guess perhaps even more concerning is that 80% of teachers lack content knowledge. And of course, the access to technology then further exacerbates that particular situation. But what do we do with this? Because this is by no means a new problem. These problems have been highlighted. They've been flagged into the education sector for many years now.
But that's my question. So, you know, with the President's SONA announcement around one device per student and digital content, people have been very critical of it. And you know, it's not a silver bullet, but it needs to be part of a democratic solution towards education. Because, you know, how else are we going to scale, change the content mastery of our teachers and provide resources for students to be able to self-direct? I think what we need to be looking at is how do we better prepare what type of content, how do we work together to become measurable outcome-driven programs using technology in the sector, because we need to disrupt whatever we're doing at the moment. Sticking to textbooks and the hope of professional learning in the basic education market is not working. And we've got students, and while we're worrying about pass marks of 30-40%, we're not, you know, trying to achieve excellence in innovation at 80-90%. And that's a real problem, because how can we say we have an innovative generation if actually all we're doing is trying to provide students an ability to pass, and maybe not even.
And we take that further and we try to just get them into a job, some sort of job opportunity, Tashmia. And when President Cyril Ramaphosa launched the YES campaign, it was meant to create around 330,000 jobs per year over 3 years to account for that 1 million job opportunities. How's that going, though?
So we're doing quite well. People don't realize that the legal framework for YES was only finalized in late October last year, which meant YES could only officially open portals in November for registration. But we have 17,000 jobs in under 6 months that have been committed by Business South Africa. So 17,000 in context of the unemployment numbers that we've seen. Mining sector shed 20,000 jobs. Construction 144,000. This is a big good news story, and it makes it one of the highest impact projects in the country that's non-government funded in terms of its numbers. But I have to concur. You know, the YES problem, we wouldn't need to exist if we had a better funnel for leading people from the school system into the space where they either need to learn how to employ themselves and create jobs for others, or get absorbed into the existing jobs. But the problem is really sticky here, because the economy, the first economy that is growing, our bubble of sand in Cape Town, Durban, is growing very much with 4IR, automation, robotics, AI. I mean, I just read an article on how many chartered accountants and lawyers are going to be out of work and need to retrain themselves. So even at higher skills levels, the economy is going to grow with less and less jobs. And this means we need innovation and creativity in terms of how we create the jobs of the future. And we're unpacking these. It's actually very exciting that what digital is doing is, yes, disintermediating jobs on the one end, but we're finding a whole range of new jobs that didn't exist before that you can now create, and with entry-level workers. So most of our youth have no matric certificate.
But are we finding those jobs fast enough? Because the unemployment crisis is creeping up all the time. Every year we have a new cohort of matriculants coming into the job market as job seekers. It just creates further and further problems. So looking at the statistics again around yes and what you were meant to do, and granted that the framework, the legal framework came into play a bit late in the day, you're still not tracking the sort of numbers you ought to be, because if we're looking at, say, 330,000 jobs per year, you should be creating around 27,500 per month.
Well, the thing with economics and infrastructure and building jobs is you can very quickly create jobs, but what is the meaning and sustainability of those? So you'd rather take it slower initially, build the infrastructure that you need to create a sustainable job. Have you found market access for these jobs? So for example, our Mpumalanga model is taking us a little bit longer because we're trying to find entry-level jobs for people in, say, for example, Bushbuck Ridge, where we've got close to 73% female unemployment. But it takes time to get the linkages into the economy of the Kruger Park, which is what we're trying to do. Build the infrastructure. If you look at our Tembisa hub, we're teaching community members how to be urban farmers, how to export from a township. So our Tembisa hub now exports high quality, high margin lettuce to niche stores. So the local grow, for example, sells lettuce harvested in Tembisa and sold by entrepreneurs. Now every entrepreneur we create there is going to create another 3 jobs next year. So this is what you want. You want to invest in the types of technologies, absolutely that's critical, that make youth more competitive when they go into these entry-level jobs. So, this thing with throwing out numbers and just saying create a target of 330,000. The president recently at the Nedbank launch of we were celebrating the top 20,000 CEOs who got us to this number. Also said we want longer-term jobs. We want them sustainable, and if it means that you don't just push for a short-term 330 in a year, and it takes 5 or 6 years. Build jobs that have a multiplier effect.
And I guess that's part of the problem. And this is something, Tashmia, that perhaps you need to be saying to the president. Don't put out figures there, because we are going to hold you accountable. We're going to benchmark you against what you said you are going to create. And, unfortunately, that is the number. Those were the numbers that were put out there. But speaking of, what about you spoke about Nedbank now, ABSA, we know, and many others committed to actually investing and helping to create these opportunities, at least for a year, for young people to go and gain some knowledge and experience, paid knowledge and experience. But have they really come to the party in any meaningful way to create the sort of numbers that will actually make a dent?
Yes. So there are 2 things here. Are we going to focus on the quantity, or are we going to focus on the quality? What is going to take us further and faster? So if you look at the economy, there's no magic wand to say that one entity can create more jobs than the entire economy did in 3 years. So there's some realism that we have to put into this, but you also do have to aim high. So what putting a big number does is it makes sure that the partners that work on this don't come in with incremental solutions or cost-heavy infrastructure and overhead, that they come in with the types of solutions that will disrupt, the type of solutions that will give you the big swathes of impact. If you are going to be teaching young people or assisting teachers with iPads. We've seen in Bushbuck Ridge, again, the Hazy View area, a beautiful not-for-profit that takes kids out of the school day at grade 4 level, where they transition from home language to English, really cripples them and makes them reinforce their concepts on an iPad. They started out with the pastor's little group of kids that were really struggling, no moms, abusive homes, and turned those kids' marks around just by using technology to reinforce concepts. So we get a lot more impact that way.
Corrin, what's the way forward? Because you're talking about, disruptive technology. We're talking about the fourth industrial revolution, and yet our reality is kids who can't read for meaning at grade 4 level. So where does the solution lie?
And I think just following on from why do we need to set large targets and scalable targets is because we're trying to respond to very large statistics that are constantly sort of berating the education sector. And I think the solution is that we say we accept that of that 55%, unemployed youth, can they think or dream about the fourth industrial revolution? Do they know their role in the fourth industrial? Do they know what they need to do? They probably don't. Right, 17,000, 20,000, 100,000. As we creep up, it's about also creating awareness, both for the individuals themselves, the parents, because there's a great responsibility that we have to acknowledge that young people need their parents and their community to support the vision, but we also need to be working out what is meaningful education in this space. What are the skills that we need to link to, and be focusing on those at primary school level and secondary school level, and not waiting until the train has already crashed. We need to see what's coming, and I think that the 55% should send a warning sign to all of us that there is a very big challenge at the moment. South Africa needs to be a part of the global digital economy, but there are certain skills that are going to be required. And box ticking of ICT courses or digital skills that don't really penetrate, don't really get to the crux of that problem, aren't going to change society. Box ticking no longer. It needs to be about meaningful impact.
Well, I tell you what, we need to talk about this a lot more because it is a serious problem. But thank you to Corrin Varady from Idea Digital Education, and yes, Chief Executive Tashmia Ismail-Saville, and we were discussing youth unemployment.